The Galactic Council of Cartography had exactly one job: don't lose planets. For 47,000 years, they'd maintained a perfect record. Then, on a Tuesday that would later be remembered as the most embarrassing day in cosmic history, junior cartographer Flixnor Grimmelwisk received a radio signal from a planet that officially did not exist. "What the blazing nebulous!" Flixnorp shrieked, his 17 eyes bulging as he stared at the detection screen. The signal was coming from grid reference spiral arm Nobody Cares About, subsection boring yellow star 3, specifically from the third rock orbiting said unremarkable star. According to the official records, that particular chunk of space contained absolutely nothing except cosmic dust and regret. But there it was, bold as brass and twice as annoying. A radio transmission containing what appeared to be primitive mathematical sequences, followed by something the computer translated as, "Hello, is anyone out there? This is Earth." "Earth?" Flixnorp muttered, frantically typing into his workstation. The computer's response was swift and devastating. Planet designation Earth. Status Mythical. Last updated never. Probability of existence 0.001%. The junior cartographer's coffee cup slipped from his tentacle and shattered on the floor, which was unfortunate because it was his favorite mug, the one with "Galaxy's okayest employee" written on it. More unfortunately, the sound attracted the attention of senior cartographer Blitherina Snobblebottom, a creature who had never encountered a problem she couldn't make exponentially worse through proper bureaucratic procedure. "Grimmelwisk," she barked, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had successfully filed 40,000 forms in alphabetical order. "What is the meaning of this commotion?" Flixnorp pointed a shaking tentacle at his screen. "Ma'am, we've got a problem. A big one. Remember that planet we classified as mythical, the one from the old stories about impossible creatures that walk on only 2 legs? You mean the fairy tale planet with the ridiculous name, Earth something?" Blitherina's expression suggested she'd rather be anywhere else in the galaxy, preferably somewhere with better coffee and fewer existential crises. "That's the one, ma'am. Well, Flixnorp gulped. "It just said hello." For a moment, the only sound in the cartography department was the gentle hum of filing cabinets organizing themselves and the distant sobbing of an intern who'd accidentally misfiled the Andromeda Galaxy under A instead of AN. Then, Blitherina did something she hadn't done in over 3 decades of government service. She laughed. Not the polite chuckle of bureaucratic amusement, but the deep, hysterical laughter of someone whose carefully ordered universe had just been turned inside out by a filing error. "Oh, this is perfect," she wheezed between gasps. "Absolutely magnificent. Do you know what this means, Grimmelwisk? That we're all going to be fired and sent to work in the Department of Sewage Management on Smellius Prime? Worse." Blitherina's grin was the sort that would make a Cheshire cat seek therapy. "This means we have to tell Director Pompington that we've lost a planet for 47,000 years. Director Pompington was not having a good day. His morning had started with his breakfast, attempting to evolve sentience and file a complaint about being eaten, continued with his assistant informing him that the coffee machine had achieved consciousness and was demanding workers' rights, and was now reaching new heights of absurdity, with 2 of his cartographers standing in his office claiming they'd found a mythical planet. "Let me see if I understand this correctly," Pompington said, his voice carrying the dangerous calm of someone who'd just realized his pension plan was about to become very, very relevant. "You're telling me that a planet we've classified as imaginary for nearly 50 millennia has suddenly decided to introduce itself via primitive radio waves?" "Yes, sir," Flixnorp squeaked. "And that this planet is supposedly inhabited by creatures that violate every known law of evolutionary biology by standing upright on merely 2 appendages." "According to the old records, yes, sir." and that these bipedal impossibilities have somehow developed technology capable of interstellar communication. The evidence would suggest so, sir. Pompington stared at his subordinates for a long moment, then reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a bottle labeled "For Emergencies Only. Break glass when universe stops making sense." He'd been saving it for his retirement party, but circumstances were clearly beyond his control. "Right," he announced after taking a generous swig. "Here's what we're going to do. We're going to send a research vessel to investigate this impossible situation. And we're going to pray to whatever cosmic forces are listening that this doesn't end with me explaining to the High Council why our filing system has apparently achieved time travel." 3 days later, the research vessel Bureaucratic Nightmare departed from the Galactic Council's headquarters, carrying a crew of the galaxy's most expendable scientists. Leading the expedition was Dr. Quizzleton Bumbershoot, a xenobiologist whose previous claims to fame included discovering that the creatures of Rigel 7 were actually highly advanced vegetables and proving that the singing crystals of Vega were just really, really bored. "Attention, crew!" Dr. Bumbershoot announced over the ship's intercom as they approached the allegedly mythical solar system. "According to our files, we are about to encounter a planet that should not exist, inhabited by creatures that cannot exist, who have developed technology they should not be able to develop. I want everyone to remember that just because something is impossible doesn't mean it's not happening. After all, we work for the government." Navigation Officer Tiddlywink's Noodlebrain was the first to spot Earth through the ship's observation deck. "Captain!" she yelled, pressing all 6 of her faces against the viewing window. "You're going to want to see this!" Dr. Bumbershoot hurried over and immediately wished he'd brought a stronger drink. There it was, a blue and green marble spinning peacefully in space, exactly where no planet had any business being. Worse yet, it was clearly inhabited. Artificial lights dotted the dark side of the planet, and various metal objects were zipping around in orbit like confused insects. "By the 7 moons of Zanzibar," he whispered, "it's actually there." "Sir," called Communications Officer Wibbleton Sprocklehoff from his station, "we're receiving another transmission from the planet. Should I put it on speakers?" "Do it!" The ship's speakers crackled to life with what sounded like organized chaos. Music, voices speaking in incomprehensible languages, something that might have been advertising for a product called Coca-Cola. And underneath it all, a repeated message. "This is Earth calling anyone out there. We're friendly. Please respond. We have cookies." "Cookies?" Dr. Bumbershoot frowned. "Doctor, what in the name of the Galactic Health Department are cookies?" Before anyone could answer, Science Officer Dingleberry Fizzlebonk burst into the bridge, clutching a tablet and wearing the expression of someone who'd just discovered that mathematics had been lying to them their whole life. "Captain," he gasped, "I've been analyzing the planet's electromagnetic signatures and the readings are completely insane." "Define insane, Fizzlebonk." "Well, sir, according to our instruments, this planet should have been destroyed by asteroid impacts approximately 65 million years ago. The geological readings suggest it's been hit by at least 7 extinction-level events, yet somehow life not only survived but thrived." Dr. Bumbershoot felt a migraine beginning to form behind his secondary eyes. "Are you telling me this planet has survived multiple apocalypses?" "Oh, it gets better, sir. The dominant species appears to have only existed for a few 100,000 years, but they've already achieved nuclear fission, space travel, and something called the Internet. At this rate of development, they should have transcended physical existence or blown themselves up at least twice by now. And yet, here they are, offering us baked goods," Dr. Bumbershoot muttered. "Noodlebrain, take us into orbit, but slowly. I don't want to startle them. The last thing we need is for these impossible creatures to think we're hostile." As the Bureaucratic Nightmare settled into a cautious orbit around Earth, Dr. Bumbershoot made the decision that would later be studied in diplomatic academies as either the greatest first contact protocol ever devised or the most spectacular failure in the history of interspecies relations. He decided to follow the manual. The manual, officially titled Proper Procedures for First Contact with Primitive Civilizations, revised edition 47, subsection Q, paragraph 12, footnote 73, was a document that had been written by a committee of beings who had never actually met any primitive civilizations, but were absolutely certain they knew how such meetings should proceed. According to the manual, first contact should begin with a formal greeting in the mathematical language of the universe, followed by a demonstration of peaceful intentions through the transmission of prime numbers, and concluded with a diplomatic invitation for the primitive species to prostrate themselves before their obviously superior galactic neighbors. What the manual failed to account for was that humans had been expecting this call for decades. "Holy moly!" shouted Dr. Mom. Jennifer Crankworth, director of the extremely secret department of Looking for Aliens, as alarms began blaring throughout the facility hidden beneath a seemingly innocent cornfield in Kansas. "We've got company!" Dr. Crankworth had spent the last 20 years of her life scanning the skies for signs of extraterrestrial intelligence, surviving on coffee, determination, and the unwavering belief that somewhere out there, someone was bound to notice that Earth was broadcasting everything from Shakespeare to sitcoms into the cosmic void. "Crankworth to all stations," she barked into her communicator. "This is not a drill. We have genuine, honest-to-goodness aliens in orbit, and they're trying to talk to us." The response was immediate and chaotic. Professor Reginald Boffington, the world's leading expert on theoretical alien psychology, came running down the corridor in his pajamas and bunny slippers. Dr. Martha Wobblebottom, head of the xenolinguistics department, dropped her sandwich and began frantically setting up translation equipment. And Colonel Jack Straightarrow, military liaison and professional skeptic, simply stood in the corner muttering, "I knew it! I told them the government was hiding something." "What are they saying?" Dr. Crankworth demanded as the translation computers worked to decode the alien transmission. "It's odd." Dr. Wobblebottom frowned at her readout. "They're sending us prime numbers, followed by what appears to be a formal diplomatic greeting, and then, well, they're asking us to acknowledge their obvious superiority and submit to galactic authority." Colonel Straightarrow snorted. "Well, that's not happening. What should we tell them?" Dr. Crankworth grinned. "The truth, of course. We tell them exactly what humans are like." Meanwhile, aboard the bureaucratic nightmare, Dr. Bumbershoot was starting to worry. It had been several hours since they'd sent their formal greeting, and the humans had yet to respond with the expected combination of awe, terror, and immediate surrender. "Sir," Wibbleton reported from his communication station, "we're receiving a response from the planet." "Excellent! Put it through!" The speakers crackled, and a cheerful human voice filled the bridge. "Hey there, space friends. This is Dr. Jennifer Crankworth from Earth. Thanks for stopping by. We got your message about the prime numbers and the diplomatic stuff, but we were wondering, do you guys like pizza? Because we've got tons of pizza, and we'd love to share." Dr. Bumbershoot blinked all 6 of his eyes. Did they just offer us food again?" "There's more, sir," Wibbleton continued. "They're transmitting what they call cultural exchange data. It appears to be thousands of hours of something called cat videos." Cat videos? "Small domesticated predators engaging in amusing behavior, sir. There are also transmissions of humans performing something called parkour, which appears to involve throwing themselves off buildings for entertainment." Science Officer Fizzlebonk suddenly perked up. "Captain, you need to see this. I've been analyzing their cultural transmissions, and these humans are doing things that should be physically impossible, such as, well, sir, they've domesticated wolves, massive predators that should tear them apart, and they've turned them into creatures that fetch sticks and sleep on furniture. They've also somehow convinced tiny flying creatures to produce edible structures called honey in exchange for protection. And don't get me started on their relationship with bovines. Dr. Bumbershoot felt his migraine intensifying. Are you telling me these creatures have formed alliances with their planet's predators? Not just predators, sir. They've turned agriculture into an art form, trained other species to work for them, and somehow convinced plants to grow exactly where they want them to. According to their own records, they've taken a planet that was actively trying to kill them and turned it into their personal playground. Communications Officer Wibbleton waved frantically from his station. Sir, the humans are requesting permission to send a representative up to our ship. They say they have someone called an ambassador who's very excited to meet us. An ambassador? Dr. Bumbershoot consulted the manual, which had exactly 3 pages dedicated to the possibility that primitive species might want to send representatives. All 3 pages essentially said, "Don't let them." Sir, Navigation Officer Noodlebrain interrupted, "there's a small craft launching from the planet's surface. It appears to be heading directly for us." Through the viewing window, they could see a sleek metal cylinder rising through Earth's atmosphere with an efficiency that made their own technology look embarrassingly primitive. Worse yet, the craft was decorated with what appeared to be flames painted along its sides, and a message that the computer translated as Ambassador Express, delivering friendship since this morning. What in the name of the Cosmic Bureau of Standards? Dr. Bumbershoot exploded. They built a spacecraft in a matter of hours? According to their transmissions, Fizzlebonk reported, his voice cracking with disbelief, they've had this technology for decades. They've been to their own moon multiple times, sent robots to other planets in their system, and have been launching people into space regularly for something they call science and fun. Fun? Dr. Bumbershoot whispered. They go to space for fun? The human shuttle docked with their ship with a precision that would have impressed the Galactic Navy's finest pilots. The airlock cycled, and through the portal stepped a figure that made every alien on the bridge question everything they thought they knew about evolution. Ambassador Patricia Wonderbottom was exactly what you'd expect from someone whose job was to represent the entire human species to whatever might be lurking among the stars. She was tall, confident, carried a briefcase that probably contained either critical diplomatic documents or sandwiches, and wore a smile that suggested she was having the time of her life. "Hello there," she called out cheerfully, apparently unbothered by the fact that she was surrounded by creatures with tentacles, multiple eyes, and expressions of utter bewilderment. "I'm Ambassador Wonderbottom from Earth. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation to meet." "Doctor," Bumbershoot stared at her. "Your invitation, but we contacted you." "Oh yes, absolutely, and we've been hoping someone would call for ages. We've been broadcasting into space for decades, playing our music, showing our art, sharing our stories. We figured eventually someone would get curious and drop by for a chat." Science Officer Fizzlebonk stepped forward, clutching his tablet like a security blanket. "Ambassador Wonderbottom, I hope you don't mind me asking, but how exactly do you walk on only 2 appendages? According to our calculations, you should fall over immediately." Ambassador Wonderbottom laughed, a sound that somehow managed to be both delightful and slightly terrifying. "Oh, that. Well, we've been doing it for a few million years now. You get the hang of it pretty quickly. Would you like me to demonstrate?" Before anyone could stop her, she proceeded to walk across the bridge, skip, hop on one foot, and finish with what appeared to be a small dance. The alien crew watched in horrified fascination as she violated every known law of physics and biology while humming something called the Hokey Pokey. "Impossible!" Fizzlebonk squeaked. "Absolutely impossible! Your center of gravity is all wrong. You should have fallen over 17 times during that demonstration." "Well," Ambassador Wonderbottom said thoughtfully, "humans have always been pretty good at doing impossible things. It's sort of our specialty. We fly through the air in metal tubes, swim in liquid that should drown us, eat foods that would kill most other species, and we've convinced fire to cook our meals instead of burning down our homes. Dr. Bumbershoot felt reality beginning to crack around the edges. Ambassador, perhaps we should discuss why your planet was listed as mythical in our records. Oh, that's an interesting story. Ambassador Wonderbottom opened her briefcase and pulled out what appeared to be a steaming cup of coffee and a folder thick with documents. We did some research after we got your signal, and it turns out Earth was removed from your galactic maps about 47,000 years ago due to a clerical error. A clerical error? Oh, yes. Apparently, some junior cartographer misspelled Earth as Irath, and when the computer couldn't find any planet called Irath, it assumed the whole thing was a typo and deleted us from your database. We've been listed as a mythical planet ever since. The silence that followed this revelation was broken only by the sound of Dr. Bumbershoot's coffee cup hitting the floor. Again, Communications Officer Wibbleton cleared his throat nervously. Ambassador, are you saying that your entire species has been lost for 47,000 years because of a spelling mistake? That's exactly what I'm saying. Ambassador Wonderbottom beamed. Isn't bureaucracy wonderful? We've got plenty of experience with it ourselves. Just last week, our postal service delivered a package to the wrong planet, Mercury, instead of Mars. Took ages to sort out. You deliver packages to other planets? Navigation Officer Noodlebrain shrieked. Oh, sure. We've got robots on Mars, probes throughout the solar system, and we're working on getting to the nearest star system. Nothing too fancy, just humans being humans. We like to explore things, build things, fix things that aren't broken, and break things that work perfectly fine. Dr. Bumbershoot sat down heavily in his captain's chair, which unfortunately chose that moment to malfunction and tip him onto the floor. Ambassador Wonderbottom immediately rushed over to help him up, demonstrating the human tendency to assist others, even when those others had multiple tentacles and could clearly manage on their own. Are you all right? She asked with genuine concern. Would you like some coffee? I brought extra. As Dr. Bumbershoot accepted a cup of what turned out to be the most delicious beverage he'd ever tasted, he realized that everything the Galactic Council thought they knew about primitive species was completely wrong. These humans weren't primitive at all. They were just different. Impossibly, inexplicably, magnificently different. Ambassador Wonderbottom, he said slowly, I think we need to have a very long conversation about what happens next. Oh, I'd love that, she replied. But first, would you like to see pictures of our pets? I brought photos of my cat, Mr. Whiskers, and he does the most adorable thing where he knocks everything off tables for no apparent reason. Back on Earth, Dr. Crankworth was fielding calls from every government leader, scientist, and conspiracy theorist on the planet. The news that aliens were real and currently having coffee with Ambassador Wonderbottom had spread faster than a viral cat video, which was saying something. Yes, Mr. President, she said into her secure phone, while simultaneously monitoring 17 different communication channels. I understand this is unprecedented. No, sir, we don't think they're here to probe anyone. Yes, sir. Ambassador Wonderbottom is our most qualified diplomat, because she's the only person who applied for the job of First Contact Ambassador when we posted it on the government employment website. The reality was that Ambassador Patricia Wonderbottom had been working as a small-town librarian when she saw the job posting for diplomatic representative for potential extraterrestrial contact, buried on page 47 of the federal employment website. Most people had assumed it was either a joke or a very elaborate way to hire someone for a desk job at the Pentagon. Patricia had always been the sort of person who believed that if you were going to do something, you might as well do it with enthusiasm. Her application essay had been titled Why Humans Are Awesome and Aliens Should Be Our Friends, and had included a detailed plan for cultural exchange programs, interspecies sporting events, and a proposal for the galaxy's first traveling petting zoo. The hiring committee had been so charmed by her optimism and so bewildered by her complete lack of fear regarding potential alien contact that they'd given her the job on the spot. For 3 years, she'd prepared for this moment by learning 17 languages, studying xenobiology, practicing diplomatic protocols, and maintaining a collection of Earth's greatest hits in case aliens wanted to understand human culture. Now, as she sat in the alien ship's conference room, sharing coffee and cat photos with beings from across the galaxy, Patricia felt that all her preparation had been absolutely worth it. "So, Doctor," Bumbershoot was saying, having consumed his 3rd cup of human coffee and feeling more alive than he had in decades, "let me understand this correctly. Your species discovered fire, agriculture, mathematics, space travel, and coffee, all while walking around on 2 legs. Don't forget pizza," Patricia added cheerfully. "Pizza was a major breakthrough in human civilization." Science Officer Fizzlebonk, who had been frantically taking notes, looked up from his tablet. "Ambassador, I have to ask, how do you make these decisions? I mean, who decided that humans should try to fly or go to space or domesticate wolves?" Patricia considered this seriously. "Well, usually someone says, 'I wonder what would happen if,' and then somebody else says, 'Let's find out,' and before you know it, we're strapping rockets to our backs or teaching dolphins to play basketball. You taught aquatic mammals to play sports?" "Oh, yes. Though, to be fair, they taught us a few things too. Dolphins are excellent at echolocation, which helped us develop sonar technology. Crows can solve puzzles better than some humans, so we study their problem-solving methods. And don't get me started on what we've learned from observing octopi." Dr. Bumbershoot felt his worldview reshaping itself in real time. "So you learn from other species instead of simply dominating them?" "Well, we tried the domination thing for a while," Patricia admitted. "Turns out it doesn't work very well. It's much more fun to be friends with other species. Plus, they teach us amazing things. Did you know that some bacteria can eat radiation? We're working on ways to use that knowledge to clean up our mistakes." "You make mistakes?" Navigation Officer Noodlebrain asked in amazement. "Oh yes, constantly. That's how we learn new things. We try something, it goes wrong, we figure out why it went wrong, and then we try something different. Sometimes we try the same wrong thing several times just to make sure it's really wrong." Communications Officer Wibbleton shook his head in wonder. That's the most terrifying approach to scientific advancement I've ever heard." "It works pretty well for us." Patricia grinned. "Just last century, we figured out how to split atoms, sequence genetic codes, and put people on our moon. This century, we're working on fusion power, artificial intelligence, and growing organs in laboratories. Next century, who knows? Maybe we'll figure out how to make vegetables that actually taste good." Doctor Bumbershoot realized that he was witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history. A species that had achieved technological advancement through sheer stubborn curiosity and an apparent inability to recognize when something was impossible. "Ambassador Wonderbottom," he said carefully, "I think we need to discuss what happens when the Galactic Council learns about this situation." Patricia's eyes lit up. "Oh, there's a council. How exciting. Are they nice? Do they like coffee? I brought extra supplies." "Well, they're bureaucrats," Dr. Bumbershoot said delicately. "They have very specific ideas about how the galaxy should be organized." "Oh, we understand bureaucracy. We invented at least 12 different types of it. Sometimes our bureaucrats create forms that need to be filled out to get permission to fill out other forms. It's wonderfully complicated." Fizzlebonk looked up from his notes. "You invented bureaucracy?" "Well, we invented our versions of it. Though I suspect every intelligent species probably invents some form of bureaucracy eventually. It's like taxes and reality television. Inevitable, but nobody's particularly happy about it." As if summoned by the mention of bureaucracy, Dr. Bumbershoot's communicator chose that moment to buzz with an incoming message from the Galactic Council. The text was brief and in typical bureaucratic fashion managed to be both urgent and completely unhelpful. Report status immediately. Director Pompington requires full briefing on Mythical planet situation. Bring forms 27B, 84C, and 193X subsection Q. Do not engage in unauthorized cultural exchange. Dr. Bumbershoot stared at the message and felt a familiar sense of impending doom. Ambassador Wonderbottom, I'm afraid we need to return to Galactic Council headquarters. There are formalities that must be observed. Oh, wonderful. I'd love to meet your council. Should I bring anything special? We have some lovely fruit baskets, and I've got a presentation about human achievements that includes pie charts. You have charts made of PIE? Oh no, pie charts are just circular graphs that look a bit like pies. Though we do have actual pies too. Would your council like to try apple pie? It's delicious. As the bureaucratic nightmare prepared for the journey back to Galactic Council headquarters, Dr. Bumbershoot found himself in the unprecedented position of dreading a routine report. How exactly did one explain to the most rigid bureaucracy in the galaxy that they had somehow lost an entire planet full of impossible creatures who had spent 47,000 years developing advanced technology, domesticating predators, and perfecting the art of coffee brewing? More importantly, how did one explain that these impossible creatures wanted to be friends? The journey to Galactic Council headquarters took exactly 17 hours, during which Ambassador Wonderbottom managed to teach half the crew how to play poker, introduce them to the concept of comfort food, and gave a fascinating lecture on human history that left everyone questioning whether humans were the most resilient species in the galaxy or simply too stubborn to realize when they should have gone extinct. So you're telling us, Science Officer Fizzlebonk said for the 15th time, that your species survived ice ages, volcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, plagues, wars, natural disasters, and each other? Well, when you put it like that, it does sound rather impressive, Patricia mused. Though, to be fair, we also invented ice cream, roller coasters, and the internet, so it wasn't all survival and struggle. We humans are quite good at making the best of difficult situations. As they approached the massive space station that served as the Galactic Council's headquarters, Dr. Bumbershoot felt his anxiety reach new heights. The station was a monument to bureaucratic efficiency, a perfect sphere covered in forms, files, and the dreams of civilizations who had submitted proper paperwork and were still waiting for approval. "Impressive!" Patricia exclaimed, pressing her face against the viewing window. "It's like a giant filing cabinet in space. How wonderfully organized." "Ambassador," Dr. Bumbershoot said nervously, "I should warn you that the Council can be rather set in their ways. They may not immediately understand human enthusiasm. Oh, don't worry about me. I work with librarians. I understand bureaucracy and organization. Plus, I brought presents." Director Pompington was waiting for them in Docking Bay 47B subsection Administrative Nightmares, accompanied by a full ceremonial honor guard of filing clerks and a notary public. He had spent the entire journey rehearsing his speech about proper procedures and the importance of following established protocols when dealing with mythical planets. What he was not prepared for was Ambassador Patricia Wonderbottom, bouncing down the shuttle's ramp with the enthusiasm of someone who had just discovered that Christmas and birthday parties could happen on the same day. "Hello!" she called out cheerfully, waving at the assembled bureaucrats. "I'm Ambassador Wonderbottom from Earth. Thank you so much for inviting us to visit. I brought coffee and cookies for everyone." Director Pompington's carefully prepared speech died in his throat as this impossible bipedal creature approached him with a smile that could have powered a small star and a bag full of something that smelled absolutely divine. "Director Pompington, I presume?" Patricia extended her hand in the universal human gesture of greeting. Doctor, Bumbershoot told me so much about you. I understand you're in charge of this magnificent operation." Pompington stared at the offered hand, then at the creature offering it, then at Dr. Bumbershoot, who was standing behind her making frantic gestures that could have meant anything from "she's completely harmless" to "run for your life." You're real," Pompington whispered. "Oh yes, absolutely. 100% genuine human. Would you like to shake hands? It's a traditional human greeting that shows we're friendly and don't have any weapons." Almost without thinking, Pompington reached out and grasped Patricia's hand. The sensation was bizarre, warm, firm, and oddly reassuring. For a moment, he forgot that he was touching an impossible creature from a mythical planet that had been lost due to a filing error. "Welcome to the Galactic Council," he heard himself saying. We need to talk." The emergency session of the Galactic Council was called to order at exactly 14:30 Galactic Standard Time in the Grand Chamber of Bureaucratic Deliberation. The chamber itself was a masterpiece of administrative architecture, circular with seating arranged in order of bureaucratic importance, surrounded by filing cabinets that contained the complete legislative history of 47,000 civilizations. At the center of it all stood Ambassador Patricia Wonderbottom, completely unbothered by the fact that she was surrounded by the most powerful administrative body in the galaxy. In fact, she seemed delighted. "Honored council members," she began, having been given exactly 3 minutes to address the assembly before they decided humanity's fate. "Thank you for this incredible opportunity. I'm here representing the people of Earth, and we are absolutely thrilled to finally meet our galactic neighbors." The council chamber, which typically echoed with the sounds of shuffling papers and bureaucratic murmuring, fell completely silent. 300 species from across the galaxy stared at this impossible creature who was addressing them as if she were at a neighborhood block party instead of a formal diplomatic proceeding. "We know there's been a little mix-up with our paperwork," Patricia continued cheerfully, "and we're so sorry about any inconvenience. We understand that Earth was accidentally removed from your records due to a spelling error 47,000 years ago. These things happen. We once mailed our tax returns to the wrong galaxy. Well, we would have if there were other galaxies to mail them to." Councillor Rigelus the extremely proper rose from his seat, his formal robes rustling with indignation. "Ambassador Wonderbottom, was it? Do you understand the magnitude of this situation? Your planet has been operating without proper galactic authorization for nearly 50 millennia. Oh my, that does sound serious." Patricia nodded sympathetically. "But we've been doing our best to be good galactic citizens. We've been broadcasting our culture into space. We haven't invaded anyone, and we've been working very hard to clean up our planet and treat our animals nicely." "You've been broadcasting without permits," Councillor Vegan the unnecessarily detailed shrieked. "Do you have any idea how many forms you should have filed for unauthorized interstellar communications?" "Well, no," Patricia admitted. "But we'd be happy to fill them out retroactively. We're very good at paperwork. We once created a form that had to be filled out in triplicate just to get permission to make copies of other forms." A ripple of what might have been approval ran through the chamber. Bureaucrats appreciated dedication to proper documentation, even when it was applied retroactively to impossible situations. Councillor Zentori, the magnificently pompous, stood up, his jeweled tentacles glittering in the chamber's light. "And what of your species' flagrant violations of evolutionary law? We have reports that you walk on only 2 appendages." "Guilty as charged," Patricia said proudly. "We've been doing it for millions of years. Would you like a demonstration?" Before anyone could stop her, she proceeded to walk, skip, hop, and perform what appeared to be a brief tap dance routine. The assembled council watched in horrified fascination as she concluded with a cartwheel and a bow. "Impossible!" gasped Councillor Betelgeuse, the overly analytical. "Absolutely impossible. Your center of gravity is completely wrong." "Well," Patricia said thoughtfully, "humans have always been pretty good at doing impossible things. In fact, we've made it our unofficial species motto. Humans, doing the impossible since we figured out fire. The chamber erupted into chaos. Councillors began shouting over each other, demanding explanations, investigations, and immediate forms to be filed in at least 17 different colours of ink. In the midst of the bureaucratic pandemonium, Director Pompington stood up and did something that hadn't been done in the Galactic Council chambers for over 2 centuries. He banged his gavel and shouted, "Order! Order in the chamber!" The effect was immediate and startling. The assembled councillors fell silent, mostly because they had forgotten that gavels could be used for anything other than opening ceremonial filing cabinets. "Councillors!" Pompington announced, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had just realized that his career was either about to end spectacularly or become the most interesting thing that had ever happened to him. "We have before us a situation that is unprecedented in galactic history. We have a species that has not only survived without our guidance, but has thrived." "But the paperwork," wailed Councillor Sirius, the obsessively organized. "There are forms to be filed, protocols to be followed. We can't just pretend that 47,000 years of missing documentation doesn't matter." Ambassador Wonderbottom raised her hand politely. "If I may suggest a solution." The chamber fell silent again. The idea that a primitive species might have a solution to a bureaucratic crisis was so unprecedented that several councillors had to sit down and fan themselves with their formal documents. "Please," Director Pompington said weakly, "we are open to suggestions." Patricia smiled that brilliant human smile that had been charming aliens all day. "Well, it seems to me that you have 2 choices. You can spend the next several centuries trying to process 47,000 years of retroactive paperwork, which would probably require forms that don't exist yet to document activities that nobody properly recorded. The collective groan from the assembled bureaucrats was audible throughout the chamber. Or, Patricia continued cheerfully, you could create a new category. Something like independently developed civilizations or self-directed species or planets that did fine on their own. Thank you very much. The silence that followed was so complete that you could have heard a pin drop if pins existed in a society that had moved beyond physical fasteners and into the realm of bureaucratic adhesion protocols. Councillor Arcturus, the deeply thoughtful, was the first to speak. You're suggesting we create a new classification. Why not? Patricia shrugged. Bureaucracies should evolve too. And honestly, Earth probably isn't the only planet you've lost track of over the years. I bet if you checked your files carefully, you'd find at least a few other mythical worlds that turned out to be perfectly real. The chamber erupted again, but this time the shouting had a different quality. Instead of outrage and confusion, there was excitement, possibility, and the distinctive sound of bureaucrats realizing they might get to create entirely new forms. "She's right!" shouted Councillor Polaris, the surprisingly insightful. "I've always wondered about those 17 other mythical planets in Sector 7. What if they're out there developing cultures and technologies and coffee without proper supervision?" "Coffee?" gasped Councillor Vega, the easily distracted. "Did someone mention coffee? Because the human ambassador brought some, and it's extraordinary." Director Pompington looked around the chamber and realized that something remarkable was happening. For the first time in galactic history, the Council wasn't just following existing procedures, they were actually thinking about creating new ones. It was terrifying and exhilarating, and probably against at least 14 different regulations. "All in favor of creating a new classification for independently developed civilizations," he called out, barely believing he was saying the words. The response was immediate and unanimous. "Aye." "All opposed?" Silence. "Motion carried," Pompington announced, and then sat down heavily as the implications hit him. "We're going to need new forms." Lots of new forms, agreed Councillor Rigel, the enthusiastically organized. Forms for classification, forms for documentation, forms for filing the forms about the other forms. Ambassador Wonderbottom clapped her hands together delightedly. This is wonderful. And while you're working on all that paperwork, Earth would be happy to help with the investigation of those other mythical planets. We're very good at exploration and meeting new people. The chamber fell silent once more as the full implications of this offer sank in. Not only had the humans solved their bureaucratic crisis, but they were volunteering to help clean up 47,000 years of administrative mistakes. You would help us? Councillor Centauri, the cautiously optimistic, asked. Even though we lost track of your planet for 50 millennia? Of course, Patricia beamed. That's what friends do. Besides, we humans love a good adventure, and think of all the interesting people we might meet. There could be civilizations out there that have developed amazing technologies, fascinating cultures, incredible food. Food! Several councillors shouted simultaneously, having been thoroughly corrupted by human coffee and the promise of more culinary delights. Dr. Bumbershoot, who had been watching this entire proceedings with the fascination of someone observing a controlled nuclear reaction, stepped forward. Director Pompington, if I may suggest, perhaps we should establish a formal first contact protocol for dealing with independently developed civilizations. Excellent idea, Pompington nodded vigorously. We'll need committees, subcommittees, working groups, study panels, and coffee, added Councillor Altair, the recently converted. Lots and lots of coffee. As the Galactic Council dissolved into the happy chaos of bureaucrats discovering they had entirely new categories of work to organize, Ambassador Wonderbottom found herself surrounded by curious aliens, asking questions about everything from human music to human food to human methods of transportation. So you really travel in metal containers that fly through the air? Asked Councillor Deneb, the perpetually amazed. Oh yes, we call them airplanes. Some of them are so big they can carry hundreds of people at once, and we have cars that travel on the ground, boats that travel on water, submarines that travel underwater, and we're working on personal flying vehicles. Personal flying vehicles. Councillor Capella, the mechanically minded, leaned forward eagerly. How do they work? Well, most of them don't work very well yet, Patricia admitted cheerfully. But that's never stopped humans before. We'll keep trying until we figure it out. That's sort of our approach to everything. If at first you don't succeed, try again. And if that doesn't work, try something completely different. And if that doesn't work, ask a friend for help. The questions continued for hours, and with each answer, the assembled aliens became more convinced that humans were either the most resourceful species in the galaxy or the most entertainingly insane. Possibly both. Meanwhile, in a small office buried deep within the council's administrative complex, a junior clerk named Squibbleton Paperwhisk was having the worst day of his career. His job was to maintain the master database of all known civilizations, and he had just discovered that Earth wasn't the only planet that had been accidentally classified as mythical. In fact, according to his increasingly frantic calculations, there were at least 43 other planets that had been lost due to various clerical errors, database malfunctions, and filing mistakes dating back thousands of years. Oh no, he whispered to himself as he stared at his computer screen. Oh no, oh no, oh no. Planet Biscuitland had been deleted from the database because someone had filed it under breakfast foods instead of inhabited worlds. The ocean planet Splashington had been lost when a summer intern had accidentally moved it to the Mythical Aquatic Creatures folder. And don't even get started on what had happened to the desert world of Sandcastleton. Apparently, someone had confused it with a beach resort brochure. Squibbleton reached for his emergency communication device with a tentacle that was shaking like a leaf in a hurricane. Director Pompington, we might have a bigger problem than we thought. Udeus, back in the council chambers, Director Pompington's communicator buzzed with Squibbleton's message just as Ambassador Wonderbottom was finishing her demonstration of something called the electric slide, which had somehow convinced 17 different species to join hands and dance together. "Excuse me, Ambassador," Pompington said, reading the message with growing horror. "It appears we may have additional mythical planets to investigate." "Oh, wonderful." Patricia clapped her hands. "How many?" 43. The chamber fell silent for exactly 3 seconds before erupting into the loudest celebration in galactic history. Bureaucrats were cheering, aliens were hugging, and someone had started a conga line that wound around the entire chamber. "This is amazing!" shouted Councillor Orion, the eternally enthusiastic. "We get to meet 44 new civilizations. Think of the forms we'll need to create, the procedures we'll have to develop, the cultural exchange programs. The food," added Councillor Cassiopeia, the recently enlightened. 44 different planets worth of food." Ambassador Wonderbottom stood in the center of the chaos, watching the most rigid bureaucracy in the galaxy transform into something resembling a very organized party, and felt a warm glow of satisfaction. This was exactly the sort of thing humans were good at, taking impossible situations and turning them into opportunities for friendship, exploration, and shared meals. "Director Pompington," she called out over the celebration, "I think Earth would be honored to help establish contact with these other independent civilizations. We could form exploration teams, share our first contact experience, and make sure nobody else gets lost in the paperwork." "Ambassador Wonderbottom," Pompington replied, his eyes shining with the light of someone who had just realized his job was about to become infinitely more interesting. "I think that's the best idea anyone has had in 50,000 years." 6 months later, the Galactic Council's new Department of Independent Civilizations had become the most popular assignment in the entire bureaucracy. Led by a joint human-alien team, they had successfully made contact with 37 of the 43 lost planets, discovered 6 new forms of coffee, established 12 cultural exchange programs, and created only 47,000 new forms, which was considered remarkably efficient by galactic standards. Ambassador Patricia Wonderbottom had been promoted to Director of Interspecies Relations and Impossible Things, a position that had been created specifically for her and came with its own office, unlimited coffee budget, and a staff of beings from across the galaxy who had discovered that working with humans was never boring. Dr. Bumbershoot had been awarded the Order of Bureaucratic Excellence and had started writing a book titled "Everything We Thought We Knew About Evolution Was Wrong, and That's Perfectly Fine." It was already being translated into 2,147 different languages and was expected to become the best-selling scientific publication in galactic history. Director Pompington had received a promotion to Grand Administrator of Impossible Situations and had discovered that his job was much more enjoyable when it involved solving interesting problems rather than just filing paperwork about them. And on a small blue planet in an unremarkable solar system, humans continued doing what they had always done: the impossible, the improbable, and the inadvisable, usually with enthusiasm and almost always with coffee. The galaxy had learned that sometimes the best solutions come from the most unexpected places, that bureaucracy works better when it includes friendship and laughter, and that any species capable of domesticating wolves, inventing pizza, and convincing fire to cook their food instead of burning down their homes was probably worth keeping around. As for the remaining 6 lost planets that hadn't yet responded to contact attempts, well, the teams were optimistic. After all, they had learned from the humans that persistence, creativity, and a good sense of humor could solve almost any problem, even the ones that shouldn't exist in the first place. But perhaps, most importantly, the galaxy had discovered something that would change everything. Humans made excellent coffee, and they were always willing to share. And in a universe full of impossible things, that turned out to be the most important discovery of all.